Hi everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Pure Delivery. And if you're new here, I'm Percy Chinda, and on this channel, we focus on practical cybersecurity and real-world delivery. In today's episode, we're continuing with the rebuild of my virtual lab after losing everything. This is episode 2 in the series. And if you haven't seen episode 1 yet, I definitely recommend checking that out after this so you've got the full context. Now in this series, this isn't about showing you the basic clicks like creating folders or installing softwares. What I'll do is walk you through the thinking behind every decision, because anyone can follow steps, but not everyone understands why those steps matter. So let's head over to the demo and continue where we stopped from episode 1. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you for joining me on this LTPD Virtual Lab Rebuild series, episode 2. So in episode 1, I showed you the folder structure within VMware Workstation application software. Today, I'll take you through the local host cloud folder structure, which follows the same approach as what we did in VMware Workstation. So step 1, establishing a solid foundation towards having a better clarity over chaos. So I'm going to show you those ISO files for the Windows Server and the Windows 11 Pro that we're going to be using for deployment today. And this is making sure we understand that we must keep the ISO files being used for deployment separate from the actual deployed virtual machines. And this is for better backup habits, faster rebuilds, and less confusion in the future. Hence clarity over chaos. We salvage what survived the lost lab. Even though the lab is gone, not everything is lost. So let's take a look at these files and folders. So within my folder here, I've got LTPD Virtual Lab Share. We're focusing today on the LTPD deployed VMs and the ISO file image. That's this two. If I double click on this, these folders are currently empty. I've just created a placeholder just for the deployed VMs that are incoming. However, within the ISO files, I was able to salvage some of this, and we'll be using the Windows 11 workstation, and we'll be deploying the Windows Server 2022. So these are the two that we'll be doing today. I've got a bunch of ISO files here that I was able to salvage, but for today we're focusing on the Windows Server and the Windows 11 Pro workstation. When deploying Windows systems, you always need your product key. And for me, I was able to salvage mine, but if you're struggling, here's how to get your product key. So quick tip, you can retrieve your Windows product key using command prompt, command line interface, PowerShell, or the registry. If you come along with me here, you can use command line. So if we type CMD, or in this case, let's try PowerShell first, and you want to run that as admin. So when that loads up, use this code here. You can but I can put that in the description for you. Copy it and paste it within your command line. You hit enter on that. That should give you your key, and here is mine for now. Obviously I'm going to blank that out, but that just shows where you can get it, and you can also retrieve it from the registry. Simply navigate to edit, and that's the registry editor. I'll bring this over here. Just follow this path where it says your H key. So if we go up to the top, so you want a H key local machine. You want to navigate to the software and navigate to Microsoft, and then navigate to Windows. Go to your Windows NT current version, and within current version you want software protection platform. And within that software protection platform, you want to look for your backup product key default, and that should be this one here. If you double click on that, and there you are, it's your product key. This is all blurred out, but if you check your system, you should be able to retrieve it using the same process that I've just used. Simple but very useful. So with the ISO files in hand, the product key in hand, we can begin the deployment. For step 3, as you can see on the screen here, this is just a simple segmentation example. We'll look more into this when we get further deeper into our matured lab environment. But for now, we are simply just trying to establish the way to manage this lab environment architecture with Active Directory, with a domain controller to manage users and computers for now. Again, like typical example is what you see on the screen there, where you segment your network as a management and host. You have VLAN for server subnets, you've got client subnet, and then you've got future demilitarized zone, DMZ zone tools for other functionalities. So for now, like I mentioned, we're just keeping it simple. We're just trying to establish our domain, deploy a domain controller, deploy a workstation, and then join that workstation to that domain. As simple as that. That's all we're trying to achieve for today. For step 4, I've shown up here, we're going to be looking to deploy VMs like I mentioned, like the Server 2022 and the Windows 11 Pro as the client machine. For Windows, the latest server is Server 2025. However, I've got the product key for Server 2022, which as you can see on the screen here, I've got reference for 2025, which has a long-term support channel. I think it goes up to 2034, but for 2022, as you can see here, this goes up to 2031, which is enough time, plenty time for us to utilize this lab before we upgrade to 2025. And on that note, we can start deploying our VMs. Now we can start the deployment of the Windows Server 2022 and the Windows 11 Pro. So we start by opening our VMware Workstation software, and up here from episode 1, if you remember, I created this folders, this template, just as a placeholder containers for this VM that are going to be deployed today. So we start off by clicking on File, go to New Virtual Machines. So that should pop up the wizard for us, and we want to choose the typical recommendation there. Click on Next. The next window presents us with the installer disk image that we want to use, and that's the same ISO file that I mentioned to you earlier on. So if we browse to that location, it should take us to the server that we want, which is that one. We click Open. So that knows that location now, and we click on Next. And this is requesting for the product key as we retrieved from the last time. And I've got mine saved somewhere here. So I'm just going to quickly grab that and paste that in here. Data center core, standard core. We're just going with this. We want to create a name for this. Should be fine. There we go. Actually, if I go back for the name, let's just call it, there is no one size fits all. What I'm explaining here is just make sure you input something that actually is of a good relevance, not just something random. So this is just a name so you can log on to the machine. So because we're going to make this our domain controller, I might as well just make this DC admin. Yeah, that's the name. Let's take away the underscore. Resume it, because if you remember, it was paused just for this other machine to get deployed. And now we can look, because at the moment what we've done with the server is literally just deployed it. We haven't given it any role. It's just sitting there as a dumb server. It doesn't know anything, it doesn't know what to do with itself. To progress, we start by opening up the server manager, which is already open. So now we want to go to manage, and we want to add a role. So here now, again, like I mentioned, we're looking to give this server a role of a domain controller. And the only way we can do that is by installing Active Directory user and computer services. So we go into, because usually if you have that tool already, it should be listed as one of these tools here, but it's not. So we need to add it by going on to manage, add roles. And these are the processes that the steps we're going to go through to get that done. We're not removing, we're looking to add. So click on next. We want to give it a role-based feature. Click on next, and that's our server that we want to use. And I select a server from the pool. We only have one, so that's already been selected. You click on next, and like I mentioned, you need to install Active Directory domain services, so which is that one. Tools, so add feature, that gets added. We click on next, that adds a dot frame, add Active Directory domain services. Again, that's what we want. Destination server is our server. Click on next, and it says restart server automatically if required. Take on that. Click on install, and that begins the process of installing the Active Directory. So once that's done, you can see there is a notification already. It's up here, which we have to look into once this process finishes. And that notification just allows us to configure the domain, that this becomes a domain controller of machines like the Windows 11 Pro to join as a computer within the domain. see if the tool is showing anything. There we are. So while that's actually happening, it's giving us that functionality that we want in this SD service that we want. So that's all done, installed. So the next thing, like I mentioned within the PowerPoint slide there, is to now promote this server to become the domain controller by clicking on that. And this next step is the deployment configuration, where we then create the new domain. At this stage, we've got 3 options: add a domain controller to an existing domain which doesn't exist, add a new domain to an existing forest which we don't have. We want to choose add a new forest, and we want to call it ltpd.com. Next, forest functionality level for Windows Server. So let's see, at the moment we can choose the highest bit. Always go for the highest. That's the option that we've got. Leave that as is default. Don't want to change too much there. I will give it a password. There we go. So a delegation for the DNS server cannot be created because your authority, of course, because it's new. So for the net BIOS, it's going to look for that LTPD name and populate in there. Once it finds it, there we are. And just click on next. A lot of this information is just a next. Click for the database location, the log files, your sysvol files, everything will usually sit under C, Windows, NTDS, and then folder files. Again, we're not really worried about this. If you want to know more, I suggest you read into it. And now it's going to look through the prerequisite just to make sure everything is fine. These are the settings that you can review for what we've done all through the processes till this point. Click on next. Installation should start. One prerequisite failed. Domain controller promotion failed. If we go back, I wonder why. Okay, I think I understand what's going on. So let's quit this and restart. We still need to promote this, but I would have to change the password to something more stronger. There we are. So we can log back in. But when you see this slash, that means definitely this has been converted to a domain joined machine. So let's try what we initially set. Hopefully that allows us. Yep, that accepted it. And now we want to open up the tools, which is the Active Directory users and computers. That's what we want. So if I click on that, and here's the domain that we created. If you open that, you should be able to see the actual tree itself. So we've got users. These are standard users, and our user that we created is in there. The local administrator that we changed the password is in there. Those are two main ones. But the main thing that we're focusing on today is the computer, which at the moment there should be 0 in there. So can also view this from the server manager. So we check all servers. Again, this is still just 1 at the moment. So now we deploy the Windows 11 Pro, similar fashion. New machine, typical, yes. Browse to the file, pick the Windows 11 Pro, open that, click on next, we name the machine, LTPD. We browse to the container, the folder. I want to put it in there. Click OK. Next, we leave it as is and give it a password. I'm just doing something very simple. Next. So this is allocating 64 gig of hard drive. For server, I gave it 60. For some reason, 11 Pro is requiring 64. We leave it at that. In similar fashion as what we saw on server, I like to keep everything as a single file. We click next, finish up. It may prompt with an error with UEFI, but we would troubleshoot that when we come to that. Usually, when you hit enter, it's usually an issue, but when you hit space, it sort of works. Let's see what happens. So if I hit space, that doesn't work. We just go back to the settings and do a quick change. So when this happens, for you to gain access to the settings, you would usually have to switch the machine off. Right click, settings, and you see what I'm talking about. So here, it wants the UEFI. Like I mentioned, you would have to switch the machine off first to gain full access to this, because you can't really make any changes until you switch off the machine. So we're just going to cancel this for now. Well, I spoke too soon. Did allow us to progress, so trouble averted. So it's English United Kingdom, because I'm in the UK. Click next on that. United Kingdom, keyboard input, click next. Yes, we want to install Windows 11. You have to agree to the terms. Next, just going to key mine in, and what this would do, it will usually check to make sure that your key is definitely valid. Now it's checking the key to make sure that it's valid. Should come back and say okay. There we are. Our product key does work. Hit next, and we progress. Accept. Should bring us to a partition side so we can partition our machine. You can leave it as default, but for me, I like to create partition. So we just splits it. File system separate from every other thing. There we are. System files separated. MSR files That's the result file separated, so everything gets installed onto 63. Again, this is not me showing you how to install. I'm sure if you've installed Windows before, you should be familiar with this process. So hit next and install should start. Once I hit install, this process now starts off. Like I mentioned before, for some reason this installing Workstation tends to take longer than servers. So this is kicked off at 15:12. So let's see how long that takes for this to finish up. Let's wait. While we're installing the server, by default the VMware tools got installed as as part of the process. But when installing for Windows 11 Pro or Windows workstations, you tend to install the VMware tools manually, and that should be presented down at the bottom here once it's finished, or wait for that to finish up. So that started up at 15:12. I mentioned the server took much quicker time to install, but let's see how long it takes for this one. So while this is going on, I'll just explain something else. Another reason why I like to create templates, because if you have to do this all the time, it's a very painful process. So I like to deploy as templates, and then within templates I deploy that as cloned machine, and then for each one of this machine to have their unique identification, that's UID, you need to do a system prep. So you can Google that and find out exactly what that means. But what it is when you do sysprep to a machine, it sort of cleans out that unique ID from that machine so it doesn't carry over as a cloned machine, meaning you have two identical machines that are dragging for resources or trying to cause confusion in your network. So sysprep would make sure that things are kept clean. I may do a separate video on sysprep just to show you exactly what I'm talking about, but for this particular case, you can look to read into sysprep and understand exactly what I'm talking about. There we go. It's about finishing this first stage. At this point, you would think that once this finishes that we would be ready to go, but that's not the case. You would see what I'm talking about. Just to double check that it's definitely been installed. So those are the files. And as I mentioned, while that's going on, we can be doing other things. So I'm just going to move this into the template folder. It doesn't stop anything, doesn't hinder the installation process. So you can just drag and move it to your folder just to keep things clean. So now the restart, it is a painful process. And like I mentioned, this is why we create templates, so we don't have to go through this process every time we want to deploy or spin up a new machine. Here we are with the second stage of configuration. Now, like I mentioned, this is even more painful than the initial installation. But let's just carry on and see exactly what I'm talking about. So click yes. And again, if you've installed Windows before, you should be familiar with this process. If not, we try to keep things just default and just change minor settings. Try not to accept anything that you don't really understand too much. Keyboard, so we want wherever location that you're at. For me, it's the United Kingdom. Want to add second keyboard? These are the settings that I'm talking about, so we're skipping this. I'm content with my UK keyboard layout. Now the updates, another painful process. Again, you don't have to sit looking at it because I'm doing this video. I have to sit down, but you can just take a break, go grab yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, water, anything that's your preference of beverage. Time to name the device. So I'm calling it LTPD Win. That's the first machine. Hit next. You would think that's it, but there's more configurations to be done. And we're back. It's for personal use, not for school. Next, more updates. Time check 26, so 14 minutes so far, and step one of the download. So this, again, like I mentioned, is another painful part. You can skip it, but I like to just run through this process rather than having to do it later on. I like to do it now. Having my security mind by saying to do it later on. No, I like to do things now. Plug in security now rather than adding security as an add-on. Time check 17:32. So far 20 minutes, and we're still at step one, downloading at 52%. 2 steps to go, or a step and 2.5 steps to go. 20 minutes. Finally, step 2, 5% installation. Time check 17:35. 22 minutes so far. Interesting. So finally, machine restarting. More updates on the way. I wonder who switches off their machine at this stage. Now the machine is restarting. Again, that whole process took 35 minutes. Amazing. I guess more configuration. We have to sign in. Okay, so now you can sign in. If you do have Microsoft account, I have one, and I'll just enter mine, LTPD standard virtual underscore lab. More configurations. So let Microsoft app use your location. Nope. Find my device. Nope. Send diagnostics. Just required only. Improve ink and typing. Not really interested in that. We don't want that. And we're almost there. Win11 template done. Folders app. Welcome back PCs. Okay. And continue. I'm check 1754. Getting close to the hour mark that I talked about. Just a painful process. Not something you want to go through every time you want to deploy your machine. Hence the template. Skip that process. Not really worried about that. Skip. No option but next. Skip. We're not importing, it's a new machine. Decline. We're not looking to pay for anything, we'll skip it. And here we are, we've got a Windows 11 virtual machine, PC's virtual lab. So if you remember what I said about VMware tools, so the reason why we've got this looking like this, that it's not fully expanded, because VMware tools hasn't been installed. Okay, that's not presenting it as an alternative way to get the VMware tools. You can simply go to VM, install VMware tools, and there we are. So, and that's just as an alternative. If it doesn't present itself here, you can simply just go to VM, then click on VMware tools, which then loads up this drive here. So you go into it and double click on the setup. And once that's installed, we should have a full use of the entire estate. Click on yes. Installation continues. If not, just using this little screen is just not convenient at all. But once that's all installed, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Next, typical, we're not looking to change anything, just go with the standard default settings. Again, once that's done, we'll just look to create LTPD domain by installing Active Directory. So that allows us to create the domain and then allows us to join this Windows 11 Pro to the domain. And as you can see now, it's been installed and we've got a full use of the entire estate. And finish. Now we can restart again. We've got two fully functional virtual machine, Windows Server, Workstation. Now this is where things start to get very, very interesting. We've moved from having standalone machines to now getting ourselves ready to create a domain and then join this to the domain. Machine is all good. If we again double click, it allows us to do that, sign in. Just doing a quick sanity check just to make you understand the difference from when a machine is just standalone from when it joins to domain. So check on this machine, device name as we named it, domain or working group. So at the moment, this is just within a working group. It hasn't been joined onto any domain. Cancel that out, close that, close. Now let's jump into the Windows 11. Let's resume that machine. And from there, we can join in. And to join onto the machine from the Windows 11 Pro workstation, we can request to join in. But in order to be allowed onto that domain, you need to have that domain, the local administrator and password, or any administrator that has that permission to do that, to allow that PC that wants to join in to join. And you see what I'm talking about. So if I click on that, enter our PIN, so that's fine. So I usually like going through this way: properties and domain or work groups. So that's a computer name. It's part of a work group, but we want it to be part of the LTPD domain. So we would go on to change, and we want to add as a member of LTPD. So if I type LTPD and see what happens. So the name LTPD will contains non-standard character. This might cause problem with some applications. Do you want to use this name? Let's call it LTPD. Wait, let's take the hyphen off. Win 11 Pro. It's still gonna complain, I believe. But again, it's trial and error. It's not really trial and error, but just to see what it can tolerate. And if I say okay, so it's too long. LTP win 10 temp. Hopefully allows that one. This is good. This is good. I like when things sometimes don't really go as planned, so that way we actually can see the limitations of things. So the new computer name LTPD win 10 temp contains characters that are not allowed. Makes you wonder what character is not allowed. So it's text, number, text. We're going to win 11 template 1. That should accept it and add it to the domain. So Active Directory Domain Controller LTP could not be contacted. Ensure the domain is typed correctly. LTPD. Okay. Ooh. Well, it says it there. Might have to use the IP address. I think the DNS is having some issues. Let's see. Our servers. IP address 19192.168.79.132. See if that allows us. We've got some troubleshooting to do. So let's see. Proving quite challenging, so we might have to change some settings, properties. I'm just creating a DNS path for it to use the domain controller, which is there. That way, hopefully, it does communicate with the domain controller. Cut that out, call it LTPD, see what happens. So we can't get to it, it's talking to it, but for some reason, it's just not accepting it. Let's just change the name for now. More troubleshooting. Process taking longer than usual, but let's see what happens in the next one. So we did take the name change. So why did it take that long? Probably was just taking a while to initialize with the other one, but let's see if it's allowed this. I like the trial and error bit. I like that. So and voila, there we are. We've managed to join that machine onto the domain with a welcome sign. So now we have to restart the machine, and then we can verify from the server side of things that everything is okay. We'll restart now. There we are. Let's see what happens. So that's happening. If I just verify within the server itself that it can now see that domain from Active Directory, refresh on that, and Active Directory here, there should be, we click refresh, there we are, and that's our computer there, successfully joined onto the domain, and that's a beautiful thing. So we have one computer that successfully joined onto the system. You can manage that's the DNS name. So it will usually have the computer name, dot the domain, and the top level, and it's saying as a workstation or a server DC type. Which one is it? Yeah, and that's it all done. As you can see there, we're able to install the Windows server, able to install the Windows 11 Pro, and we're able to promote the server to a domain controller, and then we're able to install the Windows 11, and we're able to then add that onto the domain successfully, as you can see. So that's it done. That's us done. All we need to do now is simply just power off the machine. As you know, this actually has access to the internet. It's just sitting there doing nothing, so what's the point leaving it on? So we can close this out, just close things out. The dialog must be closed. Okay, let's cancel. Close, and simply right click, power off. Next machine, right click, power off, and we can close down the VMware workstation because we're done for today. And back to the PowerPoint so we can close up properly. So we managed to achieve step 5. We were able to deploy the server, we're able to promote the server, we created the domain, we're able to deploy the workstation, we're able to join the domain, tested connectivity as you saw, we pinged, we did a lot of troubleshooting, and everything worked out perfectly, not so perfectly. Again, troubleshooting is all part of the process. It could be painful sometimes, but the main thing there is you don't give up until you get to a point where you actually achieve your goal. And that's what we did today. Also, we were able to apply just basic security, not necessarily security. Some people call it security through obscurity. All we did was simply just switch it off for the moment. That was our goal and we achieved it. We switched it off secure until the next episode. So for the next episode, we'll be looking at properly securing the VMs. We'll be looking at doing other things, hardening. We'll be looking at policies now that we actually have a domain controller which applies security through group policies, fine-tuning the lab, making things more realistic in terms of making it look like a more of an enterprise environment. So what's happened there, basically, we've gone from nothing to a structured working lab environment. And in the next episode, we start by securing the domain properly. If you have learned something from what we have done today, please like and comment, share, subscribe, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you on the next one. It's been a pleasure. Let's talk pure delivery.